should there ever be whining about jokes? I mean, if you're a comedian, you live with the jokes and you have to suffer the consequences, I guess, of the jokes. Doesn't every comedian know that? Or maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a comedian, but I just thought that they were like, thick skin is rule number one. And maybe once I get into the details, you'll agree with Mr. Chappelle's show. And maybe you won't. Dave Chappelle whining about GOP using his anti-trans jokes. Here's what Mr. Chappelle said during a recent interview with NPR.
And I did resent that the Republican Party ran on transgender jokes. Mm. You know, I felt like they were doing a weaponized version of what I was doing. I didn't. It's not what I was doing. I'll give you an example. Yeah. As before I learned the phrase, I respectfully decline. And I was on Capitol Hill, and everybody ran up to take pictures with me from every congressional office. And I just take pictures with whoever asked. I didn't ask how they voted, what their voting record is. And everyone, at first it was like CBC people. And then here comes Lauren Boebert. And she said, can I get a picture? And I'd already taken 40 pictures. I didn't want to say no in front of everybody. But I didn't know the phrase, I respectfully decline. So I just took the picture. And then she posted a picture before I could even get from there to the show and says something to the effect of just two people that know that it's just two genders. She instantly like weaponized it or politicized it. So I got to the arena and I lit her ass up for doing that. And she should never do that, a person like me.
Dave Chappelle's outspoken. He is an artist, a comedic genius. There, I said it. Let's see where you land on all of this. Chappelle was asked if he was punching down in his comedy. Listen to his response.
But what about people who feel like you're punching down? Like you are not a trans person. And there are people who feel like it's different when you are part of the group that has been attacked, hurt, demeaned, etc. And then if you're outside of that group and you're having commentary about it, it causes feelings. And what do you say to people who feel that in some occasions you're punching down?
Well, okay, this is a conversation that I'm,
You're bored by, sick of?
Nah, yeah, I'm not sick of it. I don't want to be dismissive to that sentiment, but I don't know. That's a tough one for me because so much of that was a media phenomenon. What was happening in actual life versus how the media was reporting on my show. And I feel like the way they reported on that show was rage baiting to some degree. It's almost some of the reporting was as if they almost reported on it as if I was doing something other than a comedy show. Reading a joke is a lot different than sitting in a room and hearing it. And part of the sitting in the room part of one of the reasons comedy works is because everyone that bought a ticket, clearly they want it to work. They want to have a good time. They want to have fun. But if you're a person that is very angry or passionate about something and you're afraid that you're going to be misrepresented or misconstrued and you feel like you have to police comedy to get your point across, you should assess your point.
So he wants you to, I don't know, sit with it, let it marinate a little bit. What about where Dave Chappelle chooses to share his gift? Like that Saudi comedy festival. He addressed that too?
Yeah, I know we were talking about the comedy festival in 2025. You did get a lot of fall. You did get a lot of, I don't know what your pushback or criticism for going among other people. Yeah. Okay, the intelligence, U.S. intelligence did make it clear that they believe that the Saudis killed Jamal Khashoggi in the embassy in Turkey. And you knew that when you went, right?
Oh, absolutely. Now, I should tell you.
You had no qualms?
I won't say that. They asked me to go years before that. And I said no for that very reason. Since that time, the United States government does business with the Saudis. Netflix does business with the Saudis. Everyone, the Saudis finance tons of movies. All these, I know, I see them financing boxing matches and all these things. And none of these things were an issue until I went there. And why is that? As soon as a black man can make money off the plantation, they try to tell you that the money is dirty. Well, okay, I'll go home and spend the money with actual slave owners on it. Where is this clean money you're talking
But you
about?
said you hesitated for years to go, the years you didn't go. So what made the difference for you?
Time and circumstance, time and the wheels of commerce kept turning. You know, if you want to be that pure about money, then stop driving your car, stop eating, don't use your cell phone. Everything is tethered to something that's just terrible. And I can make a million excuses or reasons to deprive that crowd of that show. But man, when I was standing in front of them, I feel like I did the right thing.
Dave Chappelle, candid. I can't wait to hear your comments about it. This is not the first time Chappelle's addressed the backlash. During Dave Chappelle's newest comedy special, Dave Chappelle, The Unstoppable, and in it, he talked about his controversial performance at the Riyadh Comedy Festival in Saudi Arabia. In the special, the comedian said, "There's no problem taking money from the country because," he said, quote, "it's easier to talk in Saudi Arabia for me than it is in America." And said he was almost canceled because he joked about trans people. But he said, "I got to tell you something. Transgender jokes went over very well in Saudi Arabia." Out magazine, that quote. 2021 Netflix special, The Closer, the comedian sparked backlash after saying gender is a fact, calling himself Teen TERF, term meaning trans exclusionary radical feminists. TERFs deny the validity of transgender people and transgender identities. Sarah McBride, former National Press Secretary for the Human Rights Campaign, told USA Today at the time, during the same special. Chappelle also defended J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter author who has similarly been criticized for her anti-trans statements. He maintained, though, that he has never had a problem with transgender people. Some Netflix employees staged a walkout in 2021 over Chappelle's special, but this streamer stood by him. Chappelle's 2023 special, The Dreamer, also took a jab at the trans community during a joke where he described meeting Jim Carrey, but being frustrated because the actor refused to break character as Andy Kaufman, who he was playing in the film Man on the Moon. "I was very disappointed because I wanted to meet Jim Carrey, and I had to pretend this guy was Andy Kaufman all afternoon," Chappelle said. "It was clearly Jim Carrey. I could look at him and I could see it was Jim Carrey." Anyway, I say all that to say that's how trans people make me feel. USA Today contributing to the reporting. It was a shock to most comedy fans when it was announced Chappelle, along with a host of other prominent comedians, would perform in Saudi Arabia at a new comedy festival. Comedians called out the festival and the headliners who agreed to perform, including Chappelle, Bill Burr, Louis C.K., Kevin Hart, Whitney Cummings, Pete Davidson, and Hannibal Buress, among others. In his special, Chappelle also addressed Charlie Kirk's assassination, sharing that he was shook because after news outlets reported, but then later walked back claims that there were pro-transgender phrases on the bullets that killed him. "I was at home like, oh no, I'm dead as fried chicken," he said. Nonetheless, Chappelle boasted about taking money from the Saudi government, saying in his special, "I'll take money from Saudi Arabia any day just so I can say no over here. Feels good to be free," he continued. "And I know that people in Saudi Arabia can't say all the things that I was allowed to say, but a deal's a deal. And the king said that I could say these things. So I looked at it like I was on a diplomatic mission. I've got to bring pee jokes to the Middle East." But the comedian said he doesn't feel guilty at all and had a few choice words for those who've spoken out against the festival. "These MFers act like because I did a comedy festival in Saudi Arabia, I somehow betrayed my principles." They said, "Well, Saudi Arabia killed a journalist. And rest in peace, Jamal Khashoggi. I'm sorry that he got murdered in such a heinous fashion. And also, look, bro, Israel's killed 240 journalists in the last 3 months. So I didn't know y'all were still counting." It's just, I feel like I've been in just a heavyweight bout after reading his comments, listening to some of them. I think it's a brilliant interview. I think it says a lot. There's so much to unpack there. Um, there's this juxtaposition between this wildly famous, intensely wealthy, successful comedian who clearly is not just telling knock knock jokes. There's so many layers here, and the fact that he is a Black man who has some things to get off his chest, but also a community, a marginalized community, saying, why are we consistently the butt of these jokes? I'm all over the place, Elliot, and I'm not trying to dodge it. There's just a lot to unpack here. And I wonder where you start.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. There's a lot of competing thoughts. One is, I mean, I will always have a soft spot for Dave Chappelle. I think he is, generally speaking, hilarious. I think he's a genius. That said, there's a lot recently, especially with the stuff you were just reading, that it just kind of, he doesn't entirely lose me, but he starts to lose me pretty hard when he starts doing this, like, well, I did this because that way I can say no in the United States. And it's like, you're Dave Chappelle, you could say no to anybody. You have that kind of money, you're incredibly successful, and coming or getting this, like, there's like a victim complex as well when these comedians have backlash that I think is really tiring. And I think that it shouldn't, this like naivete of, oh, I can't believe my trans jokes are being used by right wingers, is not surprising. Like, I thought about Will Hoyt's law, which is the idea in conservative politics that there's always got to be an in group that the law protects but doesn't bind, and an out group that the law binds but does not protect. When you make fun of an out group, i.e. trans people, like Dave Chappelle did, you can't be surprised when it's essentially usurped or captured by right-wing ideology. And I think he's just kind of pretending that like none of that's the case, that he's somehow a victim. At the same time, he's Dave Chappelle and he's a legend. So I just wish they, I don't like it the same way he's getting bored with the question. I think people might be getting kind of bored with that same answer as well.
Yeah, and maybe it's time to move on to new material. I mean,
Yeah, maybe.
comedians, and I'm not saying,
Wacky.
just move on, but it's if it's difficult to laugh and we have to explain it. And I'm not just talking about Chappelle, but just in jokes in general, then, like they're constantly doing with Trump, not to equate the two, but what about what Chappelle said about Jamal Khashoggi and the Saudis, and then Israel and killing journalists, and the other whataboutism that he did about the American government and others making money in the same way. So why are you coming at me?
Yeah. It's that same victim complex creeping up again, and seeing things through a lens of just like, well, what about this? Like, why are you so upset with me? And like, it's, everyone still loves Dave Chappelle. I also think that like when you're going into that kind of material itself, you're going to end up sounding a little hacky. And then when you take that response, which is a very legit response, and use it to suddenly become like a foreign affairs expert, where you're going, well, actually, this happened in this nation, and this happened in this nation. It's like, I think you're losing the plot just a little bit. And maybe, as you said, maybe get some new material, and maybe some new places to perform, like Los Angeles or anywhere in the country or the rest of the world.
Could be. I have a soft spot for Dave Chappelle too. And I just, yeah, I don't know. When comedians have to sit down and give interviews, and I thought that was fascinating. Good on Michelle. But when they have to explain it, it can be difficult. I almost wish Chappelle, like fearless comedians do at times, would have just answered the question, said, because I can, you know, like this was my choice and I'm doing it, period. Whether you agree with it or not is another matter. But the layers of the explanation, I just don't, I got to sit with it even more, believe it or not.